Hey, what's up, ladies and gentle-tubers? My name is Tyler. Welcome back to the eveRide channel, where I'm a little bit obsessed with dual sport and adventure motorcycles. I've got just a few here in the garage that I've tested and enjoyed and absolutely loved. Well, today I'm really excited because we've got owner information from thousands of survey respondents for 29 of the most popular dual sport motorcycles, and we've summed it all up for you to make the best decision on what dual sport or adventure motorcycle is right for you and the type of riding that you want to do. So I'm pumped. Hey guys, just a heads up before we get started with the video. It is massively long, as you can see in the time code below. So just check in the description below and you'll see all of the time codes for different chapter markers so that you can skip around in the video to the parts that interest you. But also there is a lot of really good information just kind of throughout the video. So if you're new to dual sport motorcycles, if you want to absorb the most information, if you've got thousands of dollars that you're gonna spend, you're probably gonna want to watch the whole thing. So you guys, one quick thing to say, do not be offended if your bike ranks low. That's kind of ridiculous. Whatever bike works for you is the winner. This is a community effort. It's not my opinion, it's the opinions of a couple thousand people. And so if your bike ranks kind of low, who cares? I don't think any of my bikes rank particularly high on anything, and I'm not gonna be upset about it. I know that these bikes are budget bikes and they're perfect for me. So if you spend a lot of money on a bike and it doesn't rank well on the list, who cares? Enjoy your bike. If you didn't spend a lot of money on a bike and it ranks really high, good for you, good job, way to get a good bike. You guys, there are different bikes for everybody, and whatever bike you have, just enjoy it. If you don't enjoy your bike, sell it and try a new one. That's all I'm trying to say. Enjoy the video. For the last 2 months, I've been collecting an enormous amount of data about dual sports and adventure motorcycles. This includes thousands of survey responses from the dual sport community enthusiasts who have had relevant experience with these bikes. I've also collected hundreds of expert owner responses, conducted hundreds of interviews, and I myself have poured over thousands of forum posts from ADV Rider, Thumper Talk, and a lot of different Facebook groups related to every single bike on this list. I've also been fortunate enough to be able to ride just about all of these 29 bikes, and I've owned several of them. So I hope that what I've compiled will be an informative look into the capabilities of these dual sports, including on-road touring performance, off-road and dirt riding performance, price comparisons, weight, and overall value of these 29 best-selling dual sport motorcycles on the market today. Now, unfortunately, some bikes are too new to have a good sampling of owner data, and some older bikes don't have enough owner responses for a good sample size. So I hope to update this chart to reflect more motorcycles as we get more owner experience, and updated charts will be available at my website, everrideadv.com/best-dual-sport-motorcycles. So there is a ton of information here, so check out the description and I will have chapter markers for different lists so you can jump around to the bikes and figures that you're interested in. And after I go over the scores and what I've learned in forum posts and personal interviews and from my own experience of owning and riding and hosting and interviewing owners of these bikes on my rallies and tours, one of the community's foremost experts on dual sports and adventure motorcycles, Damon Aguirre, aka Mr. Duhfactor, is going to join me for a single track rip and a discussion of the survey results and what we found to be surprising. Now, a few notes on the statistics here. The ranks were averaged and rounded to the nearest quarter of a point, and since prices vary widely by location and age of the bike and condition, prices are pretty ballpark. But with the sample size we got, it should still give us a pretty accurate average. Some people bought theirs brand new for full price, some people got them for a steal. So the average price factors in new and used bike prices. And then there's weight, and let's just be honest, motorcycle weights are all a lie. So I just went with the weights that Google gave me and then rounded to the nearest 10. So don't go by this chart to determine actual weight, as weight varies a lot by the mods that you do on your bike, by the year of the bike, by what people, including the manufacturers, claim. So these weights are definitely just ballpark, but they should still be pretty close. So there's a lot of data, but there's also a lot of missing data that's going to be said. Reliability is a huge factor. Cost of ownership is a factor. The fun factor is a factor. How easy or sketchy or twitchy is this motorcycle to ride a factor. If you spent too much and you're afraid to ride it off-road or ride it at all, can be a factor. Seat height is a factor that seems really easy to calculate. Just what's the height of the seat? Until you factor in the width of the seat and how much of your inseam that width actually reduces. So I plan to conduct some more surveys to address these factors soon, but hopefully this information is really helpful to get you started for anybody looking into riding dual sport and adventure motorcycles their way. So dual sports all excel in different areas for different riders. The purpose of this video and these lists is to get a general consensus of the strengths of each bike so that you can determine what's important to you in a motorcycle. And the needs of riders are very, very different. Right here in Southwest Utah, I'm just about 5 minutes from the trails. So I'm close enough not to want to waste time packing a dirt bike into the back of a truck, but far enough that I could still get a ticket if I didn't have a license plate. So my bike of choice is barely street legal. I changed the gearing to be very low, and since the trails are so close, I ride it a lot. So I need reliability, low maintenance. I'm also not made of money, so I need something cheap. So I chose a bike that's not on the top of any of these lists, but it's the perfect bike for me. It's the DRZ 400E, and that's the thing. Bikes might be on the top of the list, the bottom of the list, the middle of the list. You still need to find a bike that's going to be right for you. Now, contrast this if I were going around the world. Comfort, reliability, touring performance, those would all be essential. I would spend the money to get something that will get the job done with minimal problems. But I'd still want to get it through some nasty enough off-road. So again, even though it's not the top of any list, I bought a KTM 1190, and it's perfect for my adventure riding goals and wants. So what about a dual sport that you plan to commute on? Street performance would be prioritized more with every mile you have to commute. But what if you have to ride 50 miles or even like 200 miles one way just to reach the best trails close to you? You're probably going to want to get something that's comfortable but still pretty fun in the dirt, since trails are what you're aiming for. And one of the biggest factors of this information and how you will get the most use out of it is to realistically determine what kind of riding that you realistically want to do. Think about the trails close to you. What can you actually get away to do? How far is it to get to them? And what do you actually intend to do with the bike? If you're not grinding thousands and thousands of miles, you probably don't need a big, huge, heavy adventure tourer. If you're not in the gnarliest of stuff, you probably don't need an 8 or a 9 in the dirt. But here's the thing, an 8 or a 9 off-road will make even simple dirt trails easier. And an 8 or a 9 on-road will make even day trips on-road more enjoyable. Now here's the thing, I shared some of the results with a few people, and a few people of that group were legitimately livid because they spent a lot of money on a bike that didn't score as well as they thought that it should. So naturally, they said the survey was broken, that the respondents were biased, that it's a bad survey. And there are some results that I don't agree with either, and it's certainly not a perfect survey. I think that newer bikes are going to get a bias because of when people spend a ton of money on something, they definitely don't want to admit if it's crap, even to themselves. Some people are going to respond about bikes that they don't actually have any experience with. Some people are going to misinterpret the survey because they've never ridden like a Goldwing or a two-stroke. And some people are going to just outright lie about their bike's capabilities, or bag on the capabilities of other people's bikes based on the country that it was made in. So there are going to be outliers. There always are in things like this. But here's the thing, we got just over 3,200 responses from the first survey, then did another expert survey and got about 250 results from the experts owners survey. So that kind of sample size is usually pretty reliable. So, I can disagree with some results. You can disagree with the results. Despite my own prejudices and fanboyisms, towards certain bikes. I can speak my mind and I can plead my case, but the people have kind of spoken. So in general, from the bikes that I've ridden and the numbers they got from the community, I think that the community is pretty well spot on. I agree with pretty much everything they said. Maybe a few are a little off to me, but that's for me. So on to the results. And I'm putting a chapter marker right here, so a lot of people will skip the first part of this video to here, and that's fine. But if you did, please don't make comments about how the survey is broken or you disagree or whatever, because I spent a while talking about stats and all the errors and personal preference and all that stuff. So long story short, the survey is not perfect, but with the sample size that we got, it should be fairly accurate enough to paint a pretty good picture of reality. That being said, let's get started. Obviously, off-road performance is a major factor for a dual sport. Otherwise, we'd all be on street bikes. So how good is each dual sport as an off-roader? A perfect 10 would equate it to a lightweight two-stroke dirt bike capable of handling the world's most difficult hard enduro like Erzberg and Romaniacs and an extreme enduro cross. A 5 would be, it can handle most dirt trails, but it may have weight or suspension limitations that hold it back a little bit. And a 0 would be like a huge, fully loaded, low-to-the-ground street tires like Harley Davidson. And I'm not saying that a Harley Davidson can't go off-road, but it's certainly not going to perform better than literally any bike on this list. So at the top of the off-road list is the KTM 450 EXC with an astounding 9.5 rating, which means respondents believed that this bike was just a hair less capable off-road than a purpose-built two-stroke dirt bike. Now, Damon, I talked to him before, he said that was a little bit high, but I haven't ridden one enough to know. It scores a pretty respectable 4.25 for on-road performance, which is a little less than other dirt-oriented dual sports. The Husqvarna FE350 is right behind it in terms of dirt performance, followed by the KTM 500 and Husky 501. Honda's new CRF 450L comes in 5th, followed by the very well-respected Yamaha WR250R, the Husqvarna 701, Suzuki's DRZ 400, which tied with Honda's XR650R, which won Baja for years and years. That shows you just how good these bikes are off-road. Now remember, there just wasn't enough data to include bikes from Beta and AJP and other smaller manufacturers, but I can personally testify that Beta dual sports are absolute shredders off-road though. Now it's not in the top or the bottom 10, but one result that really surprised me is the off-road rank of the Honda CRF 1000L. That's the Africa Twin. And according to you guys, it's better off-road with a 6 than a KLR 650, which scores a 5.75. Now, I've ridden both of these bikes on and off the road, and while I've seen the Africa Twin do some pretty gnarly stuff, I've seen and done some really gnarly stuff on a KLR 650, and I would never dare take the AT on what I've tackled on a KLR. The Twin is also 100 pounds heavier than the KLR, and even the KLR is considered to be a pig off-road. Then again, I haven't ridden the Africa Twin enough to know for totally sure, but I do know that the KLR is pretty freaking capable off-road, so for the AT to beat it in this survey is really, really shocking. So I'm a KLR fanboy and personally think the KLR should have gotten at least like a 6, but this is your results from thousands of surveys, and I'm just one guy, so that's how it goes. The next ranking is for on-road performance, and a perfect 10 in this case would be like a bike that you could do, hundreds and hundreds of miles a day, maybe even an iron butt, day after day. It's comfortable, it's great fuel range, it's smooth on the highway at 80 miles per hour, it's gonna last a long time, it's just the ultimate touring machine. A perfect 10 in this category would be like a Honda Goldwing. A 5 would be like an okay short-range commuter, and a 0 would be like a two-stroke dirt bike that requires two-stroke fuel with soft knobbies and a top speed of like 50 miles an hour and really frequent maintenance intervals and a short fuel range. So it's obviously no surprise that BMW's R1200 GS takes the cake with a fantastic score of 9.25. Not only that, but honestly a 4 off-road is pretty rock solid. I've handled one of these big beasts on some gnarlier double track and was shocked just how planted and capable it was for how big it was. Now, obviously it's not going to be winning in the Enduros or keeping up with 7s and 8s on nasty single track, but for fire roads and double track, it's surprisingly capable. especially for being so good on the road. Early surveys, that bike, respondents were giving it an 8. And so that was kind of a red flag that there was something wrong with the survey. So I'm glad that we got a lot of responses. It really leveled that out. And also it prompted me to do the expert survey. So even though it got some 8s, those were outliers, and it ended up more in the middle. The second is the Triumph Tiger 800, which I have to say is probably the most gorgeous sounding motorcycle on this whole list. The Ducati Multistrada takes third, but has the lowest overall dirt score, and it's the most expensive bike on the list. The Yamaha Super Tenere is just below, followed by both of Suzuki's V-Stroms, Kawasaki's Versys 650, which should definitely be in the top 10 road bikes because it is a road bike. It's not really billed as a dual sport. Another BMW, the F800 GS, takes 8th spot, while Honda's Africa Twin and KTM's 1190 are tied for 9th with a 7.75. Now, the dual sport that earned the least on-road love from you guys was the Yamaha XT225 with just a 4. Now, that probably stems from it being quite a light bike. It's just 250 pounds with really mellow power. And, you know, while I tested the XT225, I was pinned and it hit about 60 miles per hour. So it's not going to be the best touring option. But honestly, it still handled 60 miles per hour, which really, if you're doing backroads touring, do you really want to go much faster? I've done a few long trips on my KTM 1190, which scored a respectable 7.75 for touring, and it can easily go over 100 miles an hour and, you know, has 150 horsepower and all that stuff. But even at 80 miles an hour, with all that buffeting and the freeway traffic, it's just not the way that I want to tour the world. It's not the way I want to have an adventure. So even the so-called worst road bike is still a perfectly capable little backroads tourer. And the XT225's big brother, the XT250, doesn't offer up much more on the road, and it's tied with the KTM XCW and the Kawasaki KLX250. Now, the bikes at or under 250 understandably get a low touring score because of the speed limitations and the power limitations, but the KTM 450 can handle 80 miles per hour pretty easily, so I had to dig into the low score there. So checked out some forum posts and interviewed some owners. The EXC owners say that their bikes do fine on the road, but it's actually a matter of burning up those precious engine hours on the pavement. And similarly, I've heard the same things from owners of the FE501 and the KTM 500 and the FE350. They all actually perform better on the road, in my opinion, than say a DRZ or a WR250R, and I'd even argue that they're better on road than like a Royal Enfield Himalayan. But owners just choose not to wring these bikes out on the road to reduce their maintenance. So that may be why these bikes scored a little bit lower on the road, even though their capability is actually a little better. The consensus with these bikes is why waste high revving engine hours with a mediocre touring bike when those hours could be spent being the absolute best dual sports off the road. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, a dedicated road bike will be better than most dual sports on the road, and a dedicated dirt bike will be better on the dirt. Where dual sports and adventure motorcycles truly shine is the range of capability between on and off road. How well did you rank its off-road performance, plus how well you ranked its on-road performance? For example, a bike almost everybody knows and probably has ridden, the KLR 650. Respondents gave it an off-road score of 5.75, which again I thought was a little low, and an on-road score of 7. That means its total range is 5.75 plus 7 equals 12.75, which is a really good range, and it shows that the KLR 650 is mostly in the middle, just a little skewed towards on-road riding, like a 60-40 bike. So according to you guys, the Husqvarna FE350 tops the list of the most capable all-around dual sport with an awesome range of 14.25, an amazing 9.25 off-road, and a respectable on-road touring score of 5. Now, I've ridden this bike in some decently gnarly stuff, as well as a fair bit on the highway, and I believe it deserves the top spot, like you said. At 260 pounds, it's one of the lightest bikes on the list, so a high off-road score makes sense. But this bike is also surprisingly smooth on the road. It can handle 75 miles an hour no problem, and it's arguably better than many of the heavier and even larger displacement dirty dual sports on the road as well, which surprised me. The lowest road score of 5 may be going back to that thing where I don't want to waste precious engine hours on the road factor. So it's no surprise that the KTM 500 and Husqvarna 501 twinners tied for second and third, since they're very similar bikes with fantastic off-road performance and would make fine mid-range tourers. And despite having a lower on-road score, the much praised dirt-oriented KTM 450 grabs number 4 with 13.75 total range points. The first big bike on the list, Honda's Africa Twin, actually ties the 450 EXCF's range, but with a much better road score of 7.75, but a hefty 530 pounds. Suzuki's ancient but extremely popular dual sport, the DR650, weighs just 350 pounds, scores just 1.25 points lower on-road and only a 0.5 point more off-road than the Africa Twin, which I think the DR650 deserves a bigger margin off-road versus the Africa Twin, but these are your results again, not mine. So either way, it grabs number 6 with very good scores both on and off-road. So now for the dual sports that, according to you guys, aren't really very dual sporty. Honda's CRF 250L, Royal Enfield's Himalayan, Kawasaki's KLX 250, and the old Yamaha XT 225 all score just an 11. With low power and dirt bike ergonomics, the CRF 250L just doesn't make a very good tourer compared to other options on the list. Yet it weighs about the same as Suzuki's really old DRZ 400. With much less power and kind of poor suspension to boot. So it's not very good off-road either. Weighing 20 pounds less, the KLX 250 scores just a tad better off-road, but may not be as planted on the road because of that weight difference. The Himalayan is a surprisingly likable bike with pretty good suspension, it's decent torque, and nice road ergonomics, but its 400-pound weight and low ground clearance really hurt it off-road. And on-road, it's kind of crippled by an underpowered motor. Then again, if you're happy at 60 miles per hour and below, and you're never planning on absolutely shredding in the dirt, any of these would make fine choices, and they do. A lot of people love them. And all of them are quite economical. So the next so-called worst range comes from the Versus 650, which is technically just a road bike that people sometimes ride off-road. The same goes for the older models of Suzuki's V-Stroms, but a big surprise to me is to see BMW's F800 GS rank in the bottom 10 on the range of capability list, since it has been around for a long time and it's billed as a dual-purpose bike. But it's obviously not all about how well the bikes do both on and off-road. An enormous factor is the value for money. How much does each of those vaunted range points actually cost? In short, how much on and off-road dual sporty adventure goodness can you squeeze out of every dollar? This is my favorite category because this is what gets new riders into dual sport. This is suddenly where the meek kind of inherit the earth. So in the previous list, you might notice the best on and off-road bikes are specialized to be very good either on or off-road. But if we look at the prices, we see that the higher the price, the closer we get to perfection on either side, while still reaching into the other side for a decent road or dirt score. The cheaper bikes kind of find themselves pretty close to the middle of the range scale. Lots of old school Suzukis, Hondas, Kawasaki's, and Yamahas in there. More dirt-oriented bikes from KTM and Husqvarna find themselves creeping toward the 9s the more expensive they get. Then right here at the Africa Twin, all the bikes shift toward road comfort and touring performance, and these are the most expensive motorcycles. But here's the thing, the prices of these bikes as they get closer to 10 on either the road or the dirt side, they get more expensive as they're specialized, but they don't really get better in both directions. No bike that scores over an 8 in the dirt scores more than a 5 on road, and at best they're only adequate. And likewise, no adventure bike that gets over an 8 on road gets above a 5 off road. Those are the unicorns, you know? So to me, it might be more economical to get an actual road bike or an actual dirt bike. A fantastic dirt bike, a 9 or a 10 two-stroke, lightweight dirt bike can be had for a fraction of the price of a dual sport that gets a 9 or a 10. And sure, it's going to stink on the road, but if you want maximum off-road performance, why not just sacrifice the on-road stuff completely and get a rad off-road machine for way less money? you know, put it in the back of your truck or something. The same goes for really expensive adventure touring bikes. Why not just grab a dedicated road tourer? Why not get a really comfortable cruiser or a touring bike for a fraction of the price and just leave the dirt performance to a dirt bike? Well, if you're only doing on-road or you're only doing dirt, then that works fine. But when you're on an adventure with all kinds of roads, you really do need something that can do it all. And it really comes down to what you intend to ride. So I divided the average price by how many range points each bike got, and the results, they're kind of awesome. So let's check them out. So the Yamaha XT225, which scored the worst on the road and one of the worst in the range with only 11, you could consider it a bad dual sport, but absolutely don't, because based on the average price of the XT225, which is about $2,250, each of its 11 range points costs only $205. That's $45 less per range point than any other bike on the entire list. So the little XT225, which I really, really love, totally kills it when it comes to value for money. Not only that, but it's also the lightest bike on the list, with one of the lowest seat heights, which are both massively important for a shorter rider, a newer rider. With its suspension and stuff, it's not going to win any hard enduros, but if you want what equates to a cheat code for gnarly dirt bike trails, the XT225's weight and seat height and mellow power, it can get this thing just about anywhere with just about any rider. Slowly, yeah, but it will get there easier than just about any other bike on the list. So Honda's XR650L gets a well-deserved second place for value. The 650L has been around for a long time and it's barely changed at all. Some people claim the L stands for lame, and while it's undeniably pedestrian and it doesn't have the grunt of the rally-winning XR650R, there's no question that the air-cooled 650L is a very capable, reliable, and undeniably inexpensive platform. Right behind the L is the XR650R, which is truly an off-road marvel for reliability and performance. Honda has won almost every Baja 1000 since 1997, and many of those were on the XR650R. So for value, it's tied with Kawasaki's amazingly versatile workhorse, the KLR 650, with solid scores both on and off the road that can be had at a ridiculously low price. I think that really explains why the KLR sells the way that it sells. It has very good off-road capabilities while still grabbing a very good 7 for on-road performance, all for $255 per point. Because a 7 on-road would comfortably get around the world, and a 5.75 off-road can handle quite a lot. And I've witnessed that on a KLR 650 firsthand. So to be honest, I'm still a bit heartbroken that Kawasaki discontinued it, and as of the filming of this video, hasn't brought anything back in its place. So here's hoping that they give us another great dual sport with the same legendary pedigree as the KLR 650. The amazing Suzuki DRZ 400 will turn 20 this year and cost just $5 more per range point than the KLR 650 and the XR 650R. There's a reason why they sell so well too. Just like the KLR excels on the road for so little money, the DRZ and its very respectable 7.5 off-road score is the best off-road option for the money. And I've gotten the DRZ through some really sketchy stuff, but the XR 650R ties its off-road score and gets slightly better on the road score. So why do I like the DRZ 400 better? Well, for starters, you can actually find them for sale. The XR 650R was discontinued, I believe, in 2007, so they can be a bit tough to find in good shape. And also for starters, the DRZ actually has one, an electric one. So the XR 650R is kickstart only, which, you know, mashing a 650 piston into submission while you're on the side of a sketchy hill climb filled with scree might not be for you. It's not for me. In fact, the XR 650R technically shouldn't be on this list because it's not street legal from the factory. You'll actually have to get it plated, add blinkers and other street legal stuff, but I had to add it to the list just because so many people have done just that. And for a big dirt bike, the XR 650R really does make just a fantastic dual sport. The Suzuki DL1000 V-Strom is the first big bike on the list, largely because they've also been around for a really long time and they're ridiculously reliable and they can be had for a song.
According to forum posts, many people prefer the DL650 because of the 30-pound weight advantage and only slightly less on-road chops. So it looks like that factor has dropped the price of the older V-Strom leader bikes by quite a lot. So if you're okay with a bit more heft and want a bit better on-road performance, at number 6, the DL1000 is a very, very good value for money. The XT250 and the KLX250 grab numbers 7 and 8, with Suzuki's two 650s, the DR650 and the 650 Strom, grabbing 9th and 10th for value. In this value category, there are many winners in different subcategories of dual sport. If you want a very versatile, capable machine that's easy to ride, the XT225 and XT250 are absolutely astounding, but you might get a little bored by the lack of grunt and lackluster highway performance. The DRZ400 is the best dirt-oriented dual sport for the money, and its bulletproof reliability means that you won't be worried about burning away those engine hours on the road. Now, if you want a great deal on a big tourer, both V-Stroms are excellent adventure bikes for the money, and for absolutely rock-solid middleweight, fantastic bikes for both distance touring and pretty serious dirt riding, you just can't beat the tried-and-true Kawasaki KLR650, the Honda XR650L, and Suzuki's DR650 for the money. And even though it's number 11, the Yamaha WR250R is another absolutely fantastic choice for dirt performance. You'll usually pay a little bit more for the quarter point more dirt performance that it ranked over the DRZ, and you sacrifice some decent power, but the WR250R, especially if it's been modded, is one of the best all-around dual sports out there. So now for the bikes that, according to you guys, aren't the best value for money. The Ducati Multistrada cost a monstrous $1,702 for each of its 11.75 points of capability. So for reference, that's almost 9 times more than each point costs for the XT225, and it's 6 times more expensive than the V-Strom DL1000, a bike that ranked just a little worse on the road and a little better off the road. And while the BMW R1200 GS is the ultimate road touring adventure bike, it's still going to cost $1,500 per point. The Tiger 800 also ranked well in range and road touring, but its steep cost of $1,200 per range point means that you'll pay for it. The F800 GS, I actually really like those bikes. I've seen them do some amazing things, and I've heard both good and bad about them. But you'll pay over $1,000 per point for the F800, which scores the same as the V-Strom 650 on road and just a quarter point better than the Suzuki off-road. I think the F800 should score better off-road, but again, that's just me. The Yamaha Super Tenere is the heaviest bike on the list, which really hurts it when it comes to off-road performance. Like the F800, it will also cost you over $1,000 per point. The KTM 1190 Adventure, a bike that I recently purchased and really like, scores poorly when it comes to price per point. The Honda CRF 1000L Africa Twin has a fantastic range for a big bike, but it will still set you back about $900 per point. However, as time goes on, I expect that price to drop while the reliability of these bikes stays pretty high. Because of the solid reliability, I think that in 5 or 10 years, the Honda Africa Twin will have one of the best values for money in the adventure bike world. Another mention, since this was the bike with the best range, is the Husqvarna FE350. Even though it has the best range out of any ranked dual sport, it'll still cost about $790 per point. So if you really want that dirt performance, a more economical option in the dual sport might be an older KTM 450. That scores even higher in the dirt and only about 3/4 of a point worse on the road. And it all comes down to that maintenance like we talked about before. But the KTM averages a much more reasonable $473 per point. Now I've also made 2 other charts, price per on-road point and price per off-road point, and these charts are just kind of for fun. I made these because let's say you buy a dual sport and you only use it off-road, or you buy a dual sport and you make the mistake of only riding it on the road. You're technically paying a lot more for a dual sport that you only use half of. Now, the winner of the cost per off-road point is going to be the XT225 because it's seriously just that cheap, and it scored a 7 off-road, which is really good. Again, not because it's going to win races, but because it's low and it's lightweight. But look at these others. If you're buying a bike only to use off-road and you do want some pretty excellent suspension and power, The XR650R and the DRZ400 are both very good options if you're just going to hop on the road a bit to switch trails. Otherwise, you really would be better off just buying a cheaper dirt bike that's going to be far better off-road for a fraction of the price. Like maybe a WR250F or an older KTM 300XC or a Kawasaki KDX200. All of these are very, very good off-road, and they're quite a lot less expensive than some of the dual sports. And for the price per on-road point, the DL1000 V-Strom takes the cake, followed closely by the KLR650 and the Honda XR650L. The XT225 isn't very good on the road, but since it's so cheap, it still takes fourth with the XR650R and DRZ400 right up there close, and the V-Strom 650 right up there as well. So if we're looking from a strictly value standpoint, I have to point out that on all three value lists, price per total range, price per off-road point, and price per on-road point, there are 7 motorcycles that made the top 10 on all three of those lists, so on-road, off-road, all together. The Yamaha XT225 and XT250, Honda's XR650L and XR650R, Kawasaki's KLR650, and Suzuki's DRZ400 and DR650. Now, none of those bikes made the top 10 road bikes, but 2 of them did make the top 10 list for off-road performance, the Honda XR650R and the Suzuki DRZ400. And actually, the DR650 tied for 10th. So of those bikes, the XR650R made the top 10 for weight, while the DR650 made the top 10 overall for performance range. So there you have it. Whether you're more of a road warrior or a dirt bike fanatic, your perfect adventure machine is going to be on this list. Or maybe not, because we don't have enough data for those other bikes. So guys, I really hope this list helps, and I want to thank everybody who participated in the survey, especially the expert surveys. Those really help balance things out. I also want to thank the producers and patrons. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me through this really long project. Now we'll be heading to American Fork Canyon for a single track shred aboard a VR650 and a KTM 990 to discuss the results and the survey with the dual sport legend himself, Damon Aguirre, aka Mr. Duhfactor. So we'll shift gears and see you there. Yeah, so just kind of hold it like this, so it looks like you're holding something. You want to introduce it?
Hey everybody, welcome to American Fork Canyon, Utah, where we are here, Brother eveRide, Tyler, and myself, Damon, Mr. Duhfactor, to discuss some of the findings of the survey. Oh, I got
I would have itched later.
I got a bug. Okay, we're good now. we want to talk about the findings on the survey that you all participated in. Tyler has shared that with me, and I've taken a look over and thought we could talk about it a little bit. What do you think about the survey?
So there was a couple of problems with the survey itself, because I wasn't super clear on what constitutes a 10 off-road versus what constitutes like a 10 on-road. On the survey it said a 10 on-road would be like equivalent to like a Goldwing, right? And so it was more about comfort than like speed and performance. And then for off-road, a 10 would be like almost a Trials 2-stroke, like a really small, light, well, not small necessarily, but lightweight, capable 2-stroke motorcycle. When I first started going through the results of the survey, there was a lot of people who were like, my GS 1200 is an 8. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, the GS is surprisingly good off-road. I was surprised when I rode one, but it's definitely not an 8.
The way I looked at it was a 10 off-road is a bike that could do the Erzberg rodeo, you know, or could do, you know, one of those really hard extreme enduro type tracks. But to me, those who are from Utah and have done 5 miles of hell, that's kind of like, portions of it may be like a 7 or an 8. KTM 990, you'd never see that on 5 miles of hell. I mean, you would just never do that. So it's maybe closer to like a 6 or a 5 maybe. Maybe it's just an understanding of definitions, but I think they generally rated their bikes better off-road than probably what they really are. And then on the other end of the spectrum, like a 10 for on-road performance is like, you know, a GS, excellent bike. I've ridden them, I like them a lot. They're very comfortable. And if you were talking about comfort only, yeah, they're probably an 8 or a 9. but if you put them on the track, they're not going to be like a Ducati 1299 Panigale or something like that. I mean, it's just they're not even in the same realm.
Are you sure, dude?
So that was kind of what I thought about it. What were some of the surprises that you found?
Like you said, I mean, people have different kind of scales of what constitutes like a really good motorcycle. So for example, like me personally, I think I ranked the DRZ like a 7.5, whereas Damon's saying a 7.5 would do like 5 miles of hell, and I would never take it. I don't think I'd ever take a DRZ on a 5 miles of hell, man. That's insane. But you know, a DRZ is like in between like okay road bike and like pretty good dirt bike. You know, it's like a 7.5 kind of in between, right? And so that's kind of the way I saw it. So the problem with the survey is the results are skewed towards a million different perspectives. And so I feel like we got...
Sorry. That's going to itch later.
We're just going to slap each other. So that was one thing about the survey. When I still had just a couple thousand responses, I asked my producers, I was like, hey, listen, guys, I'm looking to do an experts poll now. You can only take this poll if you've actually ridden two-stroke dirt bikes and you've ridden dual sports and you've ridden big adventure bikes. Like if you have at least 10 hours of experience in all those different machines, then I want you to reply, because then we have a perspective. Like some guys who start on a GS, yeah, that's an 8 off-road, because on fire roads, stuff like that, it rips, it's awesome. But like, you know, people who have experienced a two-stroke on 5 miles of hell, or who have done like enduro races, they're gonna have a little bit more of an idea. And so they took the survey as well as kind of like an expert survey, and that's why I have Damon here today, because he's ridden a lot of bikes and worked on a lot of bikes, and I mean, he's as expert as it gets. So the producers had their say in the expert survey, but over time, as more and more results came in from probably more varied sources, because I think my channel gets a lot of newer riders that are watching it, more seasoned riders who are maybe on forums helping other people, they probably saw the survey later and took it later. And so as the results came in over time, they actually really started to look very similar. So in the end, I don't think there were any bikes that had a score more than like 1.5 points away from the experts to the general public. And so really, I think it's a pretty good representation of where these bikes are at from a huge data set. I don't know what the exact number is, but it was a lot. So we had a lot of different perspectives, which, by the way, thank you everybody for taking the survey. But yeah, we have a lot of data on a lot of bikes, and I think we got a pretty good representation.
There were two things that kind of really stood out to me. One was, I thought generally from the average population, looking at that survey and looking at the rankings of the different bikes, if you took out my perspective and you looked at kind of just an average rider with an average perspective, that it was probably really pretty close. I mean, as far as what I'm saying is that there are a lot of very similar results, and you could look at a list of dual sports, they all kind of ranked pretty close.
Yeah.
And there were some little outliers who were maybe a little bit better off-road, and there were some little bit outliers who were a little better on-road. But generally speaking, what it meant to me was there's a lot of freaking bikes out there that can do this pretty close to the same.
That do a lot of stuff.
Maybe you don't need to argue about, well, my DRZ 400 versus a WR 250 or something else, because man, they're all really pretty good.
Yeah.
And have a good range. The second thing is to be realistic about, you know, what level of rider you are. And I think we need to think about an average rider, what they would, you know, be most comfortable on and what they would scale it.
Yeah, because you were telling me earlier about you ride the 990 like a lot of guys would ride a DRZ. And that bike is really capable off-road. It really is. But what were you told me?
Well, I've had people email me, and it's not that I'm a great rider necessarily. It's just the stuff that we choose to ride on. But people have emailed me, dude, I've been watching your videos, and that bike's so awesome. I went and bought a KTM 990, and dude, that thing sucks off-road, man. I can't ride that thing off-road. I can only ride it on road and fire roads. That's all. I don't know what you're doing, and you know, I wish you'd be a little bit more honest about, you know, what this bike can do or whatever. I'm like, oh man, I didn't mean, you know, to
well, the thing is like whatever, he is being honest for his capability. We're going over logs and stuff, and he's just acing them like it's nothing. And so, for somebody with Damon's experience, and you've been riding bikes since you were in diapers, pretty much.
Yeah, I was young,
so for somebody like Damon, a bike is going to be, to be honest, a little bit misrepresented, because he's a really good rider. You know, he could bring a GS on this single track and probably have no problem.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think if you're
it's too humble.
You know, if you're just kind of, you know, be pretty honest, pretty average. If the goal of looking at the survey is to try to help you choose a bike, use the survey, but also think about a lighter, smaller bike's going to be easier off-road to ride than a bigger, heavier bike, even though they may rank, you know, about the same.
Yeah.
There's that sort of bias that's in there.
When I looked at the survey, I organized the data in a couple different ways, and so I think the most capable, like the biggest range on the bike, not the mileage range of how far it goes on a tank, because that's totally variable if you have a giant tank like this, which is so heavy right now, it's miserable. I think the highest range motorcycle was the Husqvarna FE350, which I tested that bike. It was awesome, and off-road, freaking fantastic. On-road, really quite good. I'd say off-road way better than a DRZ. On-road, like, yeah, slightly better than a DRZ, which for a 350, that's amazing. That's really, really a good, awesome bike. But then at the end of that review video, I remember saying, you know, we were filming this bike on a clapped out old DRZ, and the DRZ kept up, and people hated that. People were like, a DRZ would never catch up. And it's kind of like, okay, but you know, again, you're looking at the rider's perspective. Yeah. Anyway, the FE350 was ranked the very most capable of all the dual sports. And the least capable is actually one of my favorite motorcycles I've ever ridden. And that's the Yamaha XT225. Yeah. Like, and why is that bike so much fun? Because it weighs nothing. It feels like it weighs nothing. It's low to the ground, so it's like you're... Sorry for the graphic, but you're just cheating the whole time. You can put your feet down, you can relax, it just muscles up stuff like a little tractor. It doesn't have an enormous amount of torque. It's definitely never gonna do like whoops. It's never gonna win any races, but like I had probably more fun on that bike than I have on probably 67 or 70% of the bikes that I ride and test, because it's just easy, you know what I mean? It was easy and it was fun. And another bike that was really fun that people hated me for, that I thought was pretty fun, was the CSC RX3. Like,
you got a lot of hate.
Yeah, I got a lot of hate, but like honestly, you know, I made the analogy as like playing golf with a pool noodle. Like, it's an inappropriate tool for the job, but that doesn't make it unfun. Like, it was still a really fun motorcycle, and it was still like pretty capable. The RX3 wasn't on the survey because there wasn't enough owners participating in who owns what bike. But if I was going to rank that bike, like, it'd be, you know, it'd be kind of around the XT250. I think it's more capable than some of the bikes that are on that list, frankly.
On road.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty good.
So I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what is your assessment? Because one of the graphs that you did that was really fascinating to me was the cost, the price graph. So tell me what your thoughts are in terms of looking at the ranges of how much each model of bike cost and where they ranked on the performance scale. Did you see any difference? Did you see any difference?
So bikes that get closer to a 9 in any category, whether they're a 4 off-road and a 9 on-road, or a 9 on-road and a 4 off-road. Those tend to be kind of the more expensive, more specialized bikes, and that's just what you see in everything. The more specialized something is towards a purpose, the more expensive I think it's going to be. Here's the other really interesting thing, though, is there's bikes on that list that they're expensive. I mean, like, for example, like an R1200, fantastic motorcycle, quite pricey. And then like a 990, you know, and then like a DRZ, and then down to like a KLX 250 or something. When you totally look at all those and the prices and the range of what they can do, like, you can take any of those on the freeway. You could take any bike that we put on the whole thing on the freeway and have a great time. You could take any of those bikes around the world, probably. I don't think there's any of those that wouldn't make it around the world.
Yeah, I agree.
And then you could also take any of those bikes on a trail like this with the capability. I mean, granted, taking an XT225 around the world, it'd be an interesting thing.
People have done worse.
Or yeah, for real.
Ed March.
Yeah, Ed March, right, with the C90. It's just kind of about where you want to be. If you want to be on the road more, yeah, get a more road-oriented bike. But like, don't think you're gonna have the perfect 50-50 bike in like a GS. Really, the 50-50 bikes really are like KLR, DR650, KTM 690s.
So that was the part of what he was saying was kind of what surprised me. I thought if you looked at the graph about all these bikes, and they're generally right in the middle, some a little higher off-road, some a little higher on-road, but you could price from $1,500 to $25,000, and they all pretty much are the same.
They pretty much do the same stuff.
They're not that much radically different. And I started thinking, dang, that's kind of a wake-up call. You know, I'm not knocking anybody that spends 10 grand on a bike. I do it, but you don't have to do it, is the point. You don't have to do that to have a capable bike that is going to rank right up there with some of the other high-performance bikes.
Well, and something that I think new riders especially get into, and I think new riders are going to be the ones looking at this list and thinking, oh, you know, using it objectively is like, this is kind of what the community feels about these bikes. As a new rider, honestly, like, buy a used bike that's where you think it's going to be. Like, when I bought my KLR, I was like, I'm going around the world on this thing. I am going to be a world traveler. That is my dream. It's going to be so amazing. And I took some longer trips, and I was like, wow, I really don't like this. I don't like going long distances. And I found myself gravitating more towards dirt bikes, dirtier dual sports, you know? When you start on something cheap, you can sell it for about what you bought it for. And then pretty much everybody moves up, because like, yeah, you can get your fix as a new rider on a KLX 250 or a CRF 250L or any 250, but you're gonna want some blood, like
yeah, let's want more.
Yeah, and these are good bikes to find out what you want to do more of. Like, hey, I really like being on the road, or I really like being off-road, and I'd rather just take a truck, right?
Yeah. The question it stirred in my mind, it would be really interesting to have the same exact bikes and have them rate that 0 to 10 on the fun factor. And I think it would be interesting to me to see the results of that, because that might be where some of the cheaper bikes, or maybe some of the smaller bikes, well, or maybe they actually rate really good, because you don't have the stress of the financial cost of it. And maybe then you look at it and go, wow, this person rated an XT225 a 9.
Dude, I would. I would.
And whoever's riding the stupid KTM 990 off-road on single track is nothing but freaking work. I mean, that's a 2. You know, why would I do that? You know what I mean? That would be really interesting.
That would be interesting. With enough respondents, you would get a pretty cool idea. But I mean, like, there are outliers. Like, I think an XT225 is a 9. I thought that was so fun to ride that bike. It was a riot. I think a DRZ is ridiculously fun. Even though there's more powerful bikes out there, faster, more like heart-pumping bikes, the DRZ, for me, like you said, it's fun because you throw it on its side, you forget to change the oil, you forget to change the air filter. I mean, you kind of neglect it. You get on that thing, and it's like, no worries, man. It never breaks. So, like, part of the fun factor is, like, I don't have to worry about this thing. Like, that's one reason why, you know, I love my KTM 1190, like, love it. But part of the fun factor, I would knock it way down. I mean, gosh, on the road, it's like, oh my gosh, that's like a 9 or a 10. It's so fun. Yeah. But then, like, an off-road, it's actually pretty fun. I'd be like, yeah, that's like a 7, maybe even an 8, because it's like a big, inappropriate tool for the job. But dude, to fix that thing is like a negative. So, oh my gosh, like, that takes all the fun away when you have to drop a bunch of money on a bike that's really complicated to work on. To me, other people will say, oh, that's a piece of cake, but
yeah, for me, one of the bikes that's a dual sport that's way up there on the fun factor is truthfully a WR250R.
Those are awesome.
Big bore, stroked, tuned, suspended bike, and like Kurt's bike, I love riding that thing.
I think Kurt's bike is the most fun dual sport I've ever ridden on, for real.
It's so fun. You know, so there's that.
And it's low
part.
too,
and it's
so
low.
you can cheat.
You can easily, you can cheat on it.
Even though that'll mess up the suspension in 99% of cases. If Damon does the suspension,
it can work, you know. And I walk past it. It's sitting in my garage right now, and I walk past it, and I started thinking, man, I'd like to take that bike. Then I thought, oh, Tyler's gonna be riding that big old thing. That would just be a blow. I can't do that.
I wouldn't be able to keep up. So we brought this, and I still have a hard time. But
you do great. You do great.
Oh man.
But those were some of the thoughts that I saw with it. The bottom line for me was I recognized that how many dual sports there are out there that are very similar in terms of their performance and capability, and we probably don't need to worry that much about really which one it is. I mean, as long as it's a pretty reliable dual sport bike, you can get along with a lot of different bikes.
Now, something that I do want to point out is I am not a fan of some of the bikes on the list, and I was a fan on some of the bikes on the list. 2 of the bikes that I'm not a huge fan of ranked actually lower than I thought they would. The KTM 690. That's a pretty cool bike. And honestly, I think for like a supermoto, that I don't know if there's a better supermoto like platform. That's awesome. That's a cool bike, and it's really fun on the road for that kind of purpose. But like, you know, when I got it on the freeway, when I was testing it, it was pretty rattly. Like, I was gonna buy one of these things because everybody was like raving about them. And so I got it on the freeway, and the one I had was pretty buzzy, and I was like, dang. And then I started looking at different forums and stuff, and people were like, yeah, they're pretty buzzy on the freeway. And I'd heard people before saying, oh, I regret selling X bike and buying a 690, and I was like, wow, that's a shock. Because people who love them, and people who are really good riders love them. And then I didn't quite understand it. But the KTM 690 ranked the same as a DR 650, almost exactly. And that, honestly, I don't have enough time on either bike to like say, I don't think that's true, but that was shocking to me. Either DR 650 owners really like their bikes, or KTM 690 owners like are maybe being too, I don't know.
I think they probably are pretty close.
Yeah, it could be.
I think they are pretty close.
The 690 weighs the same as a DRZ, and so I thought it'd be off-road like a DRZ, but it's not. You know, it's like a weird dual
hybrid
sport. Yeah,
it's like not quite. Almost like a half-breed between a dual sport and adventure bike.
Yeah,
that's the other thing we were going to say. This is my own opinion. This has nothing to do with the survey or anything. To me, twin-cylinder motorcycles are really bordering along the line of what I would consider an adventure bike. Using a twin-cylinder bike as a dual sport is kind of like taking a sledgehammer to a nail. You know,
it's a little overkill.
It's a little overkill, and it's not really. I mean, they really should be biased more towards adventure-style riding, because truthfully, they cannot do the same thing as a lot of dual sports can do.
I mean, that's on this trail. We're coming up this trail, moving logs around, and I got a busted back still, and we just, I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's find a flowy trail, because, these bikes, we're gonna struggle. I don't want to struggle today. I want to take it easy.
Yeah,
and
there was one.
If we were on dirt bikes, all this stuff would be a breeze, you know.
Yeah, there was a log about this high off the ground. I'm like, I'm not lifting my 990 over that.
Yeah.
So we heaved and hoed and pulled the log out of the way to go another 100 yards and then run into another one. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's all good.
There's no reason to do that. But if you had a lighter, I mean, like if you had your DRZ,
it wouldn't be an issue.
Over that log, we'd lift it over easy enough.
Yeah. Or
WR,
just
or right over it.
Yeah, no, that's pretty high. I'm not that good. That's like this high. Anyway, the other bike that was ranked a little lower than I maybe would have ranked it, that I really don't care for this bike, is the CRF 250L. You know, I've had people rent them when they come down for the rallies, and I've had the opportunity to ride them quite a bit, and I've had them break and have transmission issues, and man, they're like cursed around me or something. But people were pretty harsh on that too in the survey as well. But yeah,
we all love our bikes, and we all get really defensive about someone who may say something negative about our bikes, and I understand that, but sometimes, the truth is the truth, and we don't always like it,
Yeah.
But overall, I think that the survey was pretty enlightening.
So the results are pretty cool. Anyway, we're gonna look at the results and find some interesting things to talk about, and then get on the trail.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. All right, now to turn these
This is where it gets
big old ladies around. This is where it's real nice to have a little lightweight bike,
Mm-hmm.
This is where an XT225, you literally pick it up and just turn it around. Right?
I've been in some bad places on this bike, I'll tell you what.
I hope this isn't the best part of our video. All right, cheers.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay. There we go. Well, I think that was the worst part back there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But don't we always say that, though? That was the worst part right there, and then you look at, wait a minute.
So, one misconception that I had when I very first, it's a big knobby log right there, but when I very first got my KLR 650, I had some experience on 400s and 250s before that. My friend's dad had a dirt bike, and I really wasn't into dirt bikes because I was like, I'm not into all that maintenance, I'm not into because, like, you know, his dad was like, yeah, we're gonna Are you over?
I'm good.
Nice. He's like, anyway, there was a lot of maintenance to go with dirt bikes, and so I wasn't really keen on them. But when I get a KLR 650, I had the misconception that it would be just like a dirt bike, just as capable, but more powerful and road legal, you know?
Yeah.
And the problem is the KLR is neither more powerful than like a dirt bike, you know. Even 250s have more just grunt and power to put out, you know. But the KLR has, you know, lots of good low end torque and stuff like that, right? But
yeah,
like the 250 is going to be much faster off road. That's one of the funniest things that I saw on in Maryland. The police force, they wanted to stop the 12 o'clock boys, you know, the guys who do all the wheelies.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, we decided that we were going to get dirt bikes of our own, but more powerful dirt bikes so we could catch these guys. So they bought KLR 650. It's like,
I didn't know that.
It's like the same mistake I made, you know, like, yeah, I'm going to do the gnarliest trails and be able to go like awesome on road, you know. And so another big misconception is a lot of big guys feel like, oh, I need 650 power to get around, you know, to haul my big body around or whatever. And oh, we go this way. And that's just not the case, you know. A 250 will haul a big guy around pretty good. A 400, Colorado Dual Sport, he's a big dude.
Yeah, he is.
And he rocks a DRZ 400, and he's fine on that thing, you know.
Plenty of power for him.
And I think what's more important than power when it comes to like off-road riding is definitely suspension. And so people are like, oh well, I gotta get a DR 650, or go right ahead, I'll follow you.
Okay.
I gotta get a DR 650 or a KLR 650 or some kind of 650 to ride and
Right. There's one place, two places, excuse me, when it comes to dirt riding and things where I think power is a part of the equation. The one is in pure motocross.
yeah.
Because you have to have ultimate power to clear obstacles. I mean, it's just, but that doesn't apply to dual sport, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
in fact,
to
a
me,
lot of power can translate to bad situations with a dual sport.
and in a hurry, and unless one learns throttle control,
Yeah.
which there's skill in that, you know, but I don't think you really need an excess amount of power. People say, well, I can't believe he's saying that. Every single bike he builds got a big bore kit and a stroker, you know.
Yeah, dude. Well, I'm thinking the same thing.
But,
like, what are you getting at, man?
But the thing of it is, I like power, and there are times when I want power. If I'm in sand or if I'm dinking around, I just want to goof off. I like having it.
Hold up 1 second. So most of the bikes that you've done, you've put a big stroker kit in and big bore and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What's one bike that you didn't do that for?
My 990?
You didn't do it to your 990 because that bike's already got gobs. But you also didn't do it to my DRZ, and I always know the reason why is because I was pretty new. And if I had gobs of power, like if you'd put in a 480 kit, like I've ridden DRZs with 480 kits, and I don't think the rear tire lasts more than like 2 weeks. This is the one right here.
Okay, let's do this one.
For newer riders, you know, more power, you know, it's not something newer riders need. But for seasoned riders with throttle control and stuff like that, like, yeah, bring on the power. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's my point. Is you don't need, in an off-road situation, you don't need to have gobs of power.
Yeah.
It's good to have torque and stuff, but almost all the dual sports have enough power to be functional.
Yeah. There's some that are pretty anemic, and that get a little boring, like the 250L, and sometimes to me an unmodded WR250R just feels a little underpowered.
Right. I guess the clarification there would be you can ride it just fine.
Yeah.
But it is way more fun two-stroker kit and those bikes and tuning and all the fun stuff.
Yeah, amen, dude.
And so that's where the fun factor, you know, is got me interested. There are some times when Rojo and we get out in the desert and it's not, you know, really technical or bad obstacles or anything, but it's just a lot of fun to just to go out there and rail, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's off-road rating of a 2 or 3, 2
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
That's not a 5 or 6 or 7. And sometimes the reason I ride a big bike when I'm off-road like here is just for the challenge of it.
Yeah, it is.
Because it makes me have to work, it makes me have to think, makes me have to pay attention.
It does hone in your skills too. Like you've really got to focus a lot on clutch control and where your power's at and body positioning, and it does make it a fun challenge.
But if I want a fun, just not an uneventful kind of ride, going on a smaller bike is a ton of fun. And sometimes I feel like that. I don't want any drama. I just want to go out and roll.
Yep.
So I guess there's different purposes there too that are part of the whole fun equation.
Yeah. Now we're talking about basically another way that the whole survey is kind of bunk. Because mods. Because really, you know, people have modded their bikes to do different things. Mods can give it more range towards dirt, more range towards road capability, but very rarely will it take it in both directions. I'd say a mod that takes something in both directions would be a good seat.
Yeah.
Like just makes your bike better in all cases. But a mod that would hurt your bike off-road and help it on-road would be, I mean, tires obviously, or would help it off-road but hurt it on-road would be like stiff suspension. You know. Anyway, let's ride and talk about it.
Okay, I'll follow you. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's talk about fuel first.
Okay.
So, you know, we talk about range as being part of the equation of a dual sport bike.
Oh, hold up. My goggles are coming off. My Hawaiian lady didn't like it. All right.
You got to keep the Hawaiian lady happy.
Got to keep that lady happy. All right, go ahead, sorry.
So, we were talking about tanks, and the one tank that comes stock on the bike may be a compromise between not being so heavy to be bulky off-road and difficult to manage at the expense of reduced on-road range.
Right.
And so someone says, okay, I'm going to modify my bike by getting a bigger tank, which will help me with my off-road and on-road range. But the consequence is that you're carrying more weight, which will have an effect on your suspension, and it will have an effect on bike handling.
I'm feeling that right now. I got 50 plus pounds.
Good example.
Oh, let's go back that other way. Sorry, I took a wrong turn. Or if you want to go down this way, I don't know. Whichever way you feel like going.
Let's go down. We can come back up.
Cool, all right.
I'm going to kind of show a picture of, well, you guys seen the tank on this DR650.
Yeah, big tank.
He filled it up a long time ago and it's still got a lot of fuel in it.
Well,
and
yeah.
So you're packing around an extra 50 pounds of weight up high on your bike. That has an effect. You know, so the KTMs, for example, they design their tanks for their fuel to be as low as possible.
Yeah, they get it way low. Which
means that it doesn't have as much of an effect on your overall handling as it would on some bikes. So that's one part. If it's okay, Tai, I'll talk about suspension for a second.
Yeah, you just tell me which go, just straight here?
Yeah, you just keep rolling. Yeah, let's try straight.
Okay.
If we hit a log, we hit a log. As long as we stop before we hit the log, that's the main thing. Oh, good. I love right-hand turns.
A tight right-hander, no rear brake, just...
Yeah, that's one of the, just hope and pray.
That's right, just stab at the front brake until it brings it around.
Yeah. Do you remember that one I got stuck on with that freaking tree and it took me forever?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
I was really stuck on that one. Anyway, back to suspension. So, the full range of suspension, aside from customizing suspension for your weight, your riding style, and all that sort of thing, some bikes are much more capable off-road because depending on the type of stuff that you're riding, if you're doing single track trail riding at slower speeds like what we're doing now, a softer, more compliant suspension is better. It's more comfortable, it's more compliant, and a firm suspension is difficult because it pings off of every rock, off of every root, off of every obstacle, and knocks you offline. It's frustrating.
Yep.
So if you build a suspension for that type of riding that's going to be soft, when you get out in the desert, you start railing at high speeds, it's going to be way too soft.
Oh yeah,
well, it's scary.
Well, like Katsumi, man, like you dialed the suspension on that as good as it could be dialed, right? And
yes.
on single track stuff like this, it was so fast. That bike was so fast, and it was just money the whole way. But then, yeah, out in the desert, you know, I'd bottom it out, and it's suspension's not just, you know, dirt bike. It's there's so many things to it. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
And so no, that's exactly my point. That bike was designed for tight single track trail riding.
Yeah.
Which is what I thought it was going to be used for. But
and it was. I loved it.
Yeah, it was good at that. But if you're outside hammering on desert all the time, you've got to be able to handle that kind of stuff, and as a result, you're going to compromise compliance on slow speed technical riding.
Yep.
So if you have a bike that is normally a DRZ 400 or a WR250RR or KTM 990, I'm just talking about the ones that come right to mind, but it could apply to any bike.
Yeah.
And you modify that suspension to be more one way or the other way, it's going to affect your experience and how capable it is off-road.
In a different way. Hey, how's it going?
In a different way.
Yeah.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
We were saying earlier off camera, you kind of can't have your cake and eat it too with a lot of mods.
That's right.
That's the way it is with most mods. Very few mods will make your bike do both better.
Right.
Power's a good one. You don't want that everywhere.
That's ideal.
Remember when we saw the moose in here?
Oh, yeah.
That was terrifying.
That was scary. I was like, when you said mama moose, I about peed my pants. I'm like, oh man.
And then immediately after, I think I almost died choking on a bug.
Yep. The turkeys, you're chasing the turkeys, the wild turkeys.
Oh man.
Oh, that's fun.
Gearing is one of those mods that makes a big difference, and it's really not that hard to change. And so, you know, you can swap out a smaller sprocket on your front for a bigger one and get a little better highway performance. And it takes all of, 10 minutes at the slowest if you do that. Or you can swap out a smaller one and you'll get more kind of low end for dirt riding. So that's kind of having an additional sprocket. Yeah, that can be okay as long as you can get your chain the right, length.
Yeah, and let's talk about the other thing we mentioned briefly, and that is that if you have a bike with a 5-speed transmission, if they have a wide ratio tranny, then you do have options. You can change sprockets to improve that off-road by gearing it down, or on-road by gearing it up.
Oh, there's a deer right there. You see that? Sorry, I kind of scared it away. Not bad. Go ahead.
I'm pretty blind up here. I'd be a terrible hunter.
I would be terrible too.
You'd be as bad as I am.
Yeah, we'd be gabbing away, man. We wouldn't hit a thing.
Yeah, that's right. But let's contrast that with a 6-speed bike. So you have 6 forward gears in a lot of KTMs, a WRR.
And that is one of the big complaints that a lot of people have about Suzuki's bikes. Like, they had it on the DR350, but they got rid of it for the DRZ. They didn't put it on the DR650. The KLR doesn't have it. Like, all of them would be great, like so much better it seems with a 6th gear. But I want to hear what you're saying here, because
yeah, that's exactly right. And then there's also the KLX250 has a 6-speed. Most people
That's
don't
right.
know that.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you have a bike with a 6-speed, you've got that sort of overdrive 6-speed available. You can gear the bike down and improve its low-speed performance on technical, tighter trails and still get away with being able to ride on the freeway because you have that 6th gear.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is another modification that would widen the range of how good a bike is off-road and as compared to on-road.
Well, and something on the survey was the pretty hotly contested, bike versus bike comparison has always been the DRZ 400 versus the WR250R. And the WR250R has a 6th gear, but like that gear kind of is almost like a coasting gear, like it's like if you're in 6th gear trying to go up something, it bogs pretty hard. And so a lot of people are like, well, I'd rather have that 6th gear, but the truth is the DRZ is going to be wound just a hair higher, but you're going to have way more power at those higher speeds from the extra power. So
yeah, that's a good point. And being just slightly lower geared than the 6th gear, the DRZ 5th gear, for example, is going to put the bike in more of a power band position,
Yeah, yeah.
Which is something to consider. Like this 990, for example, I've got up 3 in the back and down 1 in the front.
Yeah. So you're a real torquey then.
And that's one of the reasons that riding this kind of stuff is possible, and I still clutch it a lot.
Yeah.
But you take a stock KTM 1190 or 990, or I don't know what the 1090s are like. I haven't ridden one yet, but stock gearing is going to make it tough off-road and tougher stuff,
Yeah.
Fire roads, you're not going to matter, but this kind of stuff is part of why I did it, because I prefer to ride this more than I do the freeway.
Yeah, yep.
And so I don't mind giving up a little bit of freeway prowess to be able to ride this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the most simple mods that you can do to your bike.
Anybody can do it.
Yeah. Just make sure to get your chain right.
Yeah, people may not agree with this, but I think that everybody has the capacity to do anything on any bike, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's not totally electronically controlled, where you have to have special tools.
Yeah.
It's just a matter, which is totally okay. It's just a matter of whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
And some people, that's the last thing they want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with just wanting to go out and ride and not dink around,
Yep, yep.
And then there's other people that they kind of find it therapeutic a little bit, and maybe it's a way to get away from their worldly difficulties and things,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm busy talking, I'm not paying attention to riding here. I can't do 2 things at one time.
Man, I love these trails though.
These are awesome. They're so great.
Yeah, so this bike has been geared really high, and I mean, like I was telling you earlier, 75, 80 easy, at about 5,000 RPMs, which is, I believe, about where it's at on my 1190. So that's impressive for a 650 thumper.
I was going to say, that's really impressive, because my bike is probably about 6,000 RPM there, the way I've geared it.
But I mean, if you're looking at my left, index and middle finger on this stuff, I'm rarely letting the clutch all the way out. Like, okay, I am now, but I mean, you've really got to modulate the clutch if you've got more road-oriented stuff, and that kind of comes down to, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't even know you were supposed to do that for a long, long time, and so I'd stall and just, oh, there's another deer right there. That's cool. And so, but yeah, and then Gabe, Torture Test Magazine, or frickin' Jim, he was like, dude, you got to use, just 1 or 2 fingers on the clutch, and then pull it like all the time. When you're losing a little power, if you start to feel that chuck, just pull that thing in and get your power back. And that's something that completely changed my riding. And so there's a lot of I mean, Barry Morris has talked about this. Almost everybody talks about it, and it's so true, but so many people miss it, is that everybody's super, you know, concentrating on gear and farkles and mods to make your bike do this or that. And a lot of people just forget that, man, seat time and just improving yourself on the bike that you already have, whatever you have, is gonna make you a better rider than, you know, most mods ever will by far.
And that is so true. That is so true. You know, I love Gabe. I think he's so awesome.
He is such a cool guy.
And that's a great pointer. That's a good little tidbit, skill to learn. And you know, it's funny too. Some people, like I've ridden with some old timers. Sorry, I got a bug in my face. I gotta.
I'm just gonna get up this hill to a flat spot, and then I'll.
Yeah, you're okay. I'll be fine. But I've ridden with some old guys, and I've asked them tips when I was younger. Tell me how you do this. You know, tell me how you do that. They're like, I don't freaking know.
Yeah.
I just go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? I don't think about it. And I think what happens is over time, people ride, and they just kind of learn things sort of naturally or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't even know how to break it down and explain it to somebody.
Yeah, it stopped being about brain and a lot more about just muscle memory, I think, a long time ago for these kind of really good riders. You know, I still have to consciously think like, hey, stand up, you know, put that weight on the outside peg,
Sure.
like lean that bike, you wuss, or, you know, like, and I've been sitting like the whole time, but we're making a moto vlog, so whatever, you know, I'm gonna sit.
Yeah. I find myself sitting too sometimes. I'm standing sometimes. Oh, that's another important thing.
Yeah, yeah.
On a dual sport bike is comfort with standing.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that I hated about my YZ490 and why one of the reasons I sold it. That bike was a ball to ride, but it was so weird. The foot pegs were high. The frame was done in such a way, and the bars, even with risers, is I just felt so, it was so unnatural for me.
To stand or sit or what?
To stand and to sit.
Oh, really?
And I rode it, you know, and I had fun with it and everything, but it's really a motocross bike. It has no business doing anything else, but still mess around with it anyway because I enjoyed it. But my point is, like Rojo, for example, he's 6'4", and
super handsome.
Yeah, he's a good-looking, sexy man, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Knocked you offline there.
Just
sorry.
thinking of Rojo got me all off kilter here.
He's not comfortable on his 990 until we put risers on it.
Really? Yeah.
And now he loves to stand. And me, the way they're set up, I'm more comfortable standing than I am sitting. So I'm standing all the time. I don't even think about it.
Yeah. Well, and for me,
YZ490 just killed me.
Yeah. For me, it kind of varies by motorcycle, you know, like, and it varies on what we're doing. Like on this stuff, at the pace we're going, I'm like, yeah, sitting, whatever.
Yeah, it's fine.
You know, but if we were really cooking, it would feel not good for me to be sitting.
Right.
You know, and my friend Craig Wasson, he's so fast, and he's a bigger dude, and he just shreds, and he's sitting like all the time, and he's just really good at sitting and riding, and
probably really efficient too.
Yeah, super efficient.
And so really tired.
And so, you know, a long time ago, I made a video, and in the video, I was like, you have to stand. And, you know, I kind of eat my words now, because it's like, you don't have to. I mean, it's definitely a good idea to, in a lot of situations. Oh, freaking A. Like there.
You go too wide and you hit the log on the one side. You go too short, you're in the ditch. I was like, man, I was glad you warned me on that one.
Dude, the funny thing, and totally off topic, but the funny thing about that is early on in you know, when I was a newer rider, going around that and starting to have problems, I would have hit the brakes and dropped throttle and dropped the bike. And it's so funny because I'm sure I'll go back in the video and listen to that, and I started dropping the bike and my throttle on purpose went nuts, and I just bolted out of that crap.
Yeah, you just panic, and that's what I do. I just, okay, hang on.
Yeah, it's like we're getting up this right now. Like, it's failure's not an option. Ah! But it's kind of funny because, you know, it's not like I rocketed forward. It was a clutch, lots of throttle and lots of clutch, you know.
Slippage, yeah. So
that's one of those things that you can't really tell somebody, okay, right now in this corner you're gonna lots of throttle but slip it a lot, you know.
Yeah,
that's just something that you just learn over time, I think.
Right, I think experience has. I think Barry does a great job of breaking things down and explaining where people could actually kind of learn how to do it, but that's not easy, you know.
It's not. Yeah, he's really got a talent for that. Man, I would love to ride with Barry, by the way.
He would
Barry,
be
if you're
fun,
watching this, get up here, man.
Come out to Utah.
For real.
It may not be all the gnar that you always like to ride, but it's fun.
It is fun.
We can find gnar for sure.
Oh, we could definitely find gnar. We can find beautiful gnar too. But.
Yeah. This is just from a scenery standpoint.
Yeah, this
really
is just kind of
spectacular.
Cruising through the trees. I don't get this stuff down where I'm at.
Right.
Unless I drive an hour.
Actually, unless I come over here, even my house is, you know, being up north here, it's not. I do a lot of desert riding out there, and that's pretty close to what you have. Maybe not quite as much, but it's nice.
All right, which way do we want to go? I'll try to hang.
I'm not gonna go. I'm not going fast, dude. I'm putzing along. In fact, I might be going too slow for you because of your gearing.
It's all good. All right, so Damon and I were back there and talking about. We brought up, you know, think about the so-called worst on-road bike versus the best on-road bike. And granted, like, you know, if you're going around the world, you're gonna have a much faster, more comfortable time on a R1200. Like, everybody knows that. than the XT225, right?
Right.
But really, like, you know, the XT225, I've been on the highway for long periods of time on the XT225, and I gotta say, it wasn't miserable. Like, you were pushing the bike for all you could, but it wasn't like this horrible slog, you know? Oh, crap.
You okay, buddy?
So yeah, what do you think about that? Like, you know, obviously the GS is better, but...
Yeah, so here's what I think. I think that how many people are there out there that really go on these huge long adventures for multiple days, or they live their life off-road or on adventures? That's just pretty, you know, there's people out there, but it's not like a ton of people. I mean, there's far more people that do actual, what we call dual sport.
Yeah, just kind of...
Which is your guy that gets on a bike and he rides from his house to a trail and rides on a trail, kind of like we did today, you know?
Yeah.
And they are gonna, you know, maybe ride one trail, and they're gonna ride on a road to find another trail, and back and forth, and it's nice to not have to load up your bike and, you know, take it by truck to your next place or put it on a trailer or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's convenient.
Yeah.
And so what I think of the XT225 is the worst in the group of bikes that are on the road.
Well, it's surprisingly also the worst as far as range goes. But again, one of my favorite bikes. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And then I'm just thinking that it's a little tight right there, buddy. For just actual dual sport riding, what's wrong with a bike that can do 65 on the road to get from a trail to a trail?
Yeah, exactly. Because
really
65 is
with that.
65 is great, and
let's be totally honest, Case, because you have an R1150, I've got the 1190, you've got the 990. We have big bikes, we've been on the road with them, we've been on longer rides with them, and like, frankly, if I want to go around the world, I do want a comfortable bike, right? Like, definitely, like, and we're talking about around the world, but like, if I go around the world, I'm not going to be wanting to go around the world 80 miles an hour on a freeway. You know what I mean? And
that's the point right there.
Those bikes can do that, and it is nice if you're commuting or,
Sorry,
you know.
That's a bad section.
Woo!
Are you okay? Sorry, that's a bad section.
Anyway, if you're commuting, yeah, 80's good, but
In fact,
yeah,
these guys are looking. Here's a good example. These guys are up here looking at us like we're crazy.
what are they on?
Let's find out.
We'll see soon enough.
Small bikes.
2 strokes?
Yep. How you doing, buddy? How you doing?
How y'all doing?
You should have seen the look on their faces.
Dude, their eyes were like as white as saucers.
Like, what is wrong with you people? Here's another one. Oops.
Oh, we'll kind of show ourselves to the side here.
Let's see. Sorry, I got a fat bike. Can you get by there, you think?
I think you can get by where I'm at. Oh, go a little bit further in, Damon. There we go.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah. Have fun, man. Us dual sport freaking grandpas, like.
Another 2-stroke.
What's funny is we're pulling to the side on these. Have fun. See you, man. What'd he say?
He says, you got some big old balls to ride those things on us. Did you see that? These little big old ponies. No, we're not clicking with the full deck, just so they all know. Oh. Hang on, I gotta get my anti-lock off.
Oh man, but anyway, yeah, so if I'm going around the world, I don't want to do it at 80 miles an hour. Honestly, I'm going to want to do it around 60, 65. Maybe
a good point.
Maybe the Oklahomas of the world, I'll want to go faster, but you know, you just kind of have to suffer through that. But I mean, so as for range on road, like any of those bikes, like we said, any of those bikes could do pretty amazing things, long trips. Ed March is doing, he's been around the world, or gosh, he goes everywhere on a C90, right? Isn't that what he's riding?
Yeah, those C90.
That's bonkers. So, you know, obviously a GS is going to be way more comfortable than a C90. And anyway,
yeah.
So when it comes to, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my whole thought on that is that it's unlikely. Well, for most of the people who do dual sport riding, that low score on-road performance is inconsequential.
Amen.
Because you're going to be riding 65 miles an hour or less, connecting trails, going from your house, not likely riding on the road for the sake of adventure.
Yeah, freeways aren't very adventurous when you're getting passed by motorhomes and stuff.
Yeah, it's just scary.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just something to consider with that.
Well, and something else. I mean, I can ride my 1190 and I can go 100 miles an hour easy on that bike. The thing is, and that bike's got good wind protection. Probably not even as close to as good as a GS, you know, a big outfitted GS. But going real fast on a highway on a motorcycle for me anyway, it's not really my idea of a real good time. You know what I mean?
I totally agree.
I mean, if you just need to get somewhere quick, that is handy to be able to go, 80, 90.
You better have somebody to talk to. That's all I can say. Because I've ridden to Mexico, and if I didn't have Ryan and Brent to talk to the whole way, I lost my freaking mind.
I think that actually happened to me when I did the West Coast Adventure Tour. Granted, I had a lot of stuff to see. I stayed off the freeways. I was on the one right by the coast the majority of the time. Oh man. I heard that.
You know what I did?
Yep.
When it down, throttle out.
It's so true, and as a new rider, you hear that quote and you're like, bull crap, nobody does that.
Ain't no way, man.
And then once you get a little used to it, it happens, and it's like, man, that works every time.
Yeah,
lots of throttle, a little bit of slip. You're not going to stall, and you power
helps
through.
to line things right. Oh, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Do we need to set up right here and have a little discussion right here? Maybe we just keep going.
I think we should keep. My fuel light just came on too.
Oh. How is it to not have so much fuel weight?
We could just drain it from that into this.
Right.
That is beautiful though, isn't it?
Oh, so gorgeous.
Oh man.
The cameras do nothing.
Yeah, let's keep rolling, buddy.
Alrighty. So really, for most riders, what you said is correct. For most riders, the on-road performance really is pretty inconsequential. And I'd say for adventure bikes, it does mean more. And granted, the adventure bikes do score better on road, as they should. They absolutely should.
So,
but for dual sports, I mean, I don't think there was a lot of actual like dual sports, like lighter weight dual sports that scored above a 5 on the road, and yet people are still taking those on long distance trips.
Yeah, I mean Neil, he took a DRZ 400 through Africa,
and then he took a CRF 250 all the way from Alaska to South America. So there's all kinds of examples of busting the stereotypes where you need this or you need that.
But you really don't.
Yeah. What about off-road performance? You had a really good point on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you got these bikes that rate really high. Oh.
That sounded like genitals.
That was close to genitals. It was a stall, and when I do that, then I lose my anti-lock brakes and I panic.
You got some big old hefty rocks in here, man.
Yeah, there's some big boys.
Oh, freaking A.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is that there are these bikes that are rated really high on the off-road scale for technical off-road capability.
Which is a good thing to have, I think.
It is a good thing to have. It is a good thing to have. The thought that I had, though, was how many people who get into dual sport are really going to worry or want to do a level 9 or 10 trail?
Yeah, something that would absolutely require the best of the best.
Yeah. I don't think that that's something that is really all that common.
Yeah. So my camera battery, I botched it, and we ran out of battery because I let it sit. I left it on while we were chatting, sitting around. But we were just talking about, and I don't know how much I got on my camera, but we were talking about, when it comes to on-road capability, how much do you really need a 9? And I said if I go around the world, I'm not going to want to do it at 80 miles an hour. I'm going to want to do it 60 to 65, which all these bikes can do, and that, that's not stressful on the bike, that's not stressful on the rider, it's not sketchy. That's a speed that I think a motorcycle is great at, And so, while a 9 in comfort and everything, that matters, I think the ability to go real fast is maybe not as important as we make it out to be. And then off-road, let's see. Remind me what we were saying off-road.
Okay, so what I was kind of wanting to talk about in terms of off-road is that you have these certain bikes that rate extremely high off-road. And examples are the KTM 350, the KTM 450, KTM 500,
Yep.
and others.
Yeah.
Which they really are excellent bikes.
Yeah, they're amazing.
For difficulty off-road. So, but in the dual sporting world, how many people and how often are you going to want to really ride trails that are truly at 9?
Yeah.
Or 10, you know? If you're riding that bike, you know, if you're wanting to ride a dual sport type of trail, like we were just discussing, what would we, and I'll just ask Tyler, you know, we talked about this for a second, the trail riding you just watched us go on, of course it never looks as difficult on GoPros or Sonys as it is in real life, but what would you rate that trail and why?
Well, yeah, we both said, yeah, that's like a 5 or a 6, you know? Like, pretty much any dual sport could do that. We could probably get a GS up that, like, you know, we could probably get a multistrada up that, and I think the multistrada is what ranked the worst. It does come down a lot to the rider, and it does come down a lot to just like the trails you want to go on. And honestly, I don't find trails that are like above like maybe 8. I don't even know if I've ever been on a. I don't know where we're going, man.
I don't either. We may be coming back up over the top.
Damon's gas light is on.
Yeah,
anyway, I don't think I've ever been on a trail that's a 10. I might not have ever even been on a trail that's a 9, you know?
Now, let me ask you this question.
And frankly, I don't think I would find those kind of trails fun.
Right, that's my point. That's my exact point, is that's not fun. That's work and stress. You know what I mean?
Right, like, you know, I watch people do 5 miles of hell, and I'm like, well, honestly, that does look kind of fun. Like, it looks fun with
a group, just so you can watch everybody crash. Yeah,
it looks fun in like a Type 2 way, like where it's miserable at the time, but like while you're in it, it's terrible. But when it's done, you're like, yeah, I did that. Hold up just a sec. I gotta put my earbuds back in. Yeah, let's,
that was the point I wanted to make. So I'm thinking, if you were buying a dual sport bike and you really wanted to do dual sport riding, chances are you really don't necessarily, or you're really not going to want to ride 8s, 9s, and 10s.
But so you're not going to want to ride those trails, but bikes that are that capable on those trails make harder trails, make 7s and 6s feel like 4s and 3s. You know what I mean? Like some people, like my good friend Colin, he was riding a DRZ and learning on that bike, and the DRZ's heavy, right? Yeah. And so he was kind of struggling, and he switched to, I believe, a KTM 450, and he's like, man, all these trails are easy now. They're all easy. Yeah. And so it really is like, you know, if you are struggling with trails, and you get a more capable bike, that's gonna make those trails easier. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You might not be maxing out your bike's capabilities, but your capabilities will improve, I think. Yeah. Especially if you're used to a big pig, and then you go to something super capable, you know?
Right. And I think the factor, at least in there's a lot of factors, but probably the biggest factor is weight.
Oh yeah, weight is. Yeah, weight's easily a huge factor. On a trail like this, I think my biggest qualm, the reason why I didn't bring up the KTM 1190, my biggest qualm is my back's busted, and picking up the bike is a real stress.
It is. It is stressful.
And so this bike is quite a bit, well, not quite a bit lighter. It's got 50 pounds of fuel in it. But this bike is lighter, and so it's a little less stressful. You know, the KTM 1190 could do all that stuff pretty easy, but dropping it and picking it up, that's going to knock off a lot of your energy too.
10 years of your life.
It's like worse than smoking a pack a day, bro.
I know, man. That's
Yeah.
why no matter what, whatever I do, I'm like, please don't drop it. Please
Yep.
don't drop it. Don't let it go.
Yeah. So like, you know, an R1200 GS could probably do some real gnarly stuff. Like, if we think about it, those are actually quite capable off-road. But if you drop it and it's rubber side up, like the 990s are amazing. You guys dropped it on that one freaking crazy trail.
Freaking Stansbury Park front trail, yeah.
That was nuts, man.
We pretty much destroyed his bike
keep
getting it
rolling.
up.
Oh, I know, that was so brutal.
It was such a beautiful bike before then. I'm like, she's broken in now, homie.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what you do.
It's got so much character now.
That's right.
But you know, getting a big bike up really is what makes them less capable. You know what I mean? Their suspension bogs and you know, it's not, their suspension's not made for it. But I think the big issue with big bikes, heavier bikes, is picking them up. You know what I mean? Whereas a DRZ, you know, a DRZ is still fairly heavy for a dual sport. The 250L is the same weight, almost. And there's not a lot of bikes that are like dual sport that are a lot lighter than that, you know, that are like way lighter.
Yeah, KTM definitely has the game on when it comes to weight.
Well, and Beta, holy crap,
Beta
that 480RR
too,
was nuts. That was so light and that was awesome. And I'm surprised that wasn't on the list, but I guess not enough people own them.
So tell me what you think about a new beginner bike, or a new beginning rider who wants to get into dual sport, looking at the results. These are guys, they want to learn. They don't want a huge investment. Give me your top 5 bikes that you think would be ideal for an average size rider, without any like medical issues or whatever, just, you know, an average person.
Sure, okay.
Average height.
So top 5 bikes.
Yeah, in order, and then I'll give you mine.
Oh, dang, in order.
I might be, okay, don't do it in order, but...
Well, okay, yeah, I guess just top 5 bikes, and then maybe we can put them in order after that, like after we come up with it, but I really do think the KLR was like the adventure bike to start on. Like, adventure bike, not dual sport necessarily, but adventure bike, you know? Because freeway speeds, I mean, I was doing these trails, these are some of the first trails I ever did on off-road, you know? And that was on my KLR, and it was awesome. And so that bike has mellow power, it has enough to handle the freeway, they're inexpensive, and so the KLR, I think, is just such an awesome bike for that, because you buy one and you know exactly where you want to be for your next bike, or if you just want to stick with the KLR, which a ton of people do for good reason, because it really is just a super good all-arounder, you know? So yeah, KLR 650 for getting into adventure or like light off-road dual sport stuff, you know? And they can be modded quite a bit to be pretty cool off-road and really pretty good on-road. You know, comfortable, and they're just so inexpensive. That's the thing, you know.
So I'm with you. I think that's a good, especially for the money, you know.
Yeah. I think another, I mean, this is again my bias, but I think another beginner bike, a really good one, is the DRZ 400, because it's got good power, but it's not ever like 450 wrapped out power. You know what I mean? Like, some 450s have power that's like a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's like the crazy girlfriend, you know. It's
it's super sexy, but it makes you worried.
Yeah, you know, something's gonna go sooner or later.
Yeah, and the DRZ 400, you know, it has lots of power. The maintenance is really chill. They're super duper reliable. They can be pretty stinking cheap, and they really are like kind of right in the middle. I wouldn't want to buy a DRZ. Somebody was asking, hey, I want to buy a dual sport and then commute 40 miles a day. I saw that post the other day, and it's like, yeah, 40 miles a day, I wouldn't even touch a dual sport. I don't like commuting on a motorcycle, because for me it just kills the fun of it.
Yeah,
like commute in a car, like, you know, just be comfortable and let work be work, you know. But
40 miles a day on a DRZ would really be hard.
Yeah, that would be. to me, 40 miles a day commuting on any motorcycle, I would just prefer a car. That's just me. And I know, you know, I love motorcycles, and everybody should know that, but commuting, man, it just sucks the fun out of whatever. You could be in a Ferrari and the commute would still suck. You know what I mean? It's just commute. It's a commute.
I'm going to throw you off for just 1 second.
Okay.
Because there are certain things that make a commute enjoyable for me, and I'm like you. And this does not probably even belong in this video, but on a Harley or a custom chopper, I enjoy it.
Really?
I do. I really enjoy it. And part of it is it's so comfortable and it's so relaxing. I would do that any day over a car.
Wow.
Now I have a road glide, and that's part of it.
That's pretty nice, yeah.
But on a dual sport, no way.
Yeah.
No
Well,
way.
see,
I would lose a fun hurry.
I haven't ridden a cruiser for years and years, so you know, I forgot how comfortable they are. And to me, dual sports are comfortable because, you know, I'm used to sitting on a board.
Yeah.
I guess, you know.
So I'm liking it. KLR, DRZ 400.
So those are two good ones. And the KLR would be more if you're actually going to commute or going to take longer trips. The DRZ can do the longer trips just like any bike on the list, but the DRZ is it's not as good on the road, right? If you really want to do a lot more road, I think a really awesome beginner bike is the V-Strom 650. I think that's just amazing in a lot of different ways. Oh, what the heck? Oh, here we are.
Here we are.
Air road. I think the V-Strom BL650 would be a great, like, beginner kind of more on-road and just occasional very light off-road. I think a DR650 could get up that stuff, or a DL650 could get up anything we just did. I've seen them do pretty crazy stuff. So that would be my top three. Number four, like if you're a lot smaller, and you want something that you can put your feet on the ground and something that's easy and lightweight and not a hassle for maintenance, I really do absolutely love the XT 225 and 250. And the funny thing is I agree with the scores that it got. It is the lowest scoring on-road motorcycle, and it's the lowest scoring motorcycle as far as range. And I agree with those scores, but it's still one of my favorite. I mean, it would still be in my top 5 because it can do just about anything. Like, I bet you could do 5 miles of hell on that bike, because it's just like, okay, you know, put your wheel up to this rock and you know, just push off.
Like Dr. Dual Sport did one on a CRF 150.
Yeah, that's right. Or was it a 230 or a? I can't remember what he did. I remember he was
basically.
He was rocking the electric start, you know, to get over. He was using the starter motor to push himself up over some stuff. That was awesome.
But it might have been a 230.
I don't know what it was, but I remember that part, and that's impressive. Like, that was cool. So that would be, like, you know, my number 4. And probably number 5, if you're really into it for the dirt stuff, this one's going to be more pricey, but it is going to be the best range, and I think well-deserved best range and one of the very best off-road bikes. That Husqvarna or however you say it, the Husqvarna FE350 was outstanding. That's such an awesome bike. But then it really does come down to, do you want to put long-range road miles on that motor? And if you're good with that, then yeah, you know, get that bike. But if you want to save that motor for your real off-road stuff, like, then that, you know, you probably better get in a DRZ 400. So those are my top 5. What would yours be?
Okay, that's a good grouping. Okay, so I have a hard time. This might surprise you, but I have a hard time with spending a lot on a dual sport bike. Now, this bike that I have right now is what I would consider more of an adventure bike. It is classified in the dual sport category, but I don't look at it that way, and I just got a freaking bug right up my nose. Okay,
do you need to pull over?
I got him. He went out instead of in.
Oh man.
You know how they tell
Oh
you
yeah.
get a sneeze?
Oh yeah.
End his life.
Oh dang.
I think for dual sport, I think one of the overlooked, highly overlooked bike is the KLX 250.
Really? Dude, well, hold up. Because like stock KLX 250, they're pretty gutless, right?
They are.
But,
Gutless.
dude, your Katsumi was off the chain. Like that bike was awesome.
The problem with Katsumi is it was an electric start.
Yeah, that kind of killed a lot of it.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about the new rider, okay?
Uh-huh.
So I'm thinking about the new person that doesn't even really maybe know how to kickstart a bike, doesn't want to spend a lot of money, but wants to get in and do a little bit of exploring. I think that's just, it's an overlooked bike. It's a 6-speed transmission, electric start. They're pretty reliable.
That's true.
They have decent components. They're similar to the other bikes in terms they're heavy, but I think it's an overlooked bike.
Huh, okay.
And I'm going to try to pick different ones than you picked, okay?
Okay.
But
Well, no. Do your top 5, because if they're the same
Okay.
thing, there's a consensus and it's cool. But
Okay.
we can also
All
go
right.
into different bikes too. But
Okay, I think another one that's right up there is the WRR.
yeah, oh yeah,
And for height and low center of gravity. It's not a real tall bike, and so people can handle it a little bit better.
yeah,
I personally wouldn't want one unless it was heavily modified, just because, and the same thing with the KLX 250. But I've seen inside their motors, I've seen inside their transmissions, I've seen inside their parts, and they are built a lot like a DRZ 400.
yeah. That's good.
They're built to last, and I like that. That's part of why they're heavier. They have components that are heavier.
Well, I'd
Their
trade
suspension is terrible.
for me. I would trade weight for reliability any day. Like I'm okay with having a
Yeah.
heavier bike that's just gonna go. You know?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the way they are. They are all going to die between 23 and 28,000 miles. Even if
Yeah.
you take care of them, you're going to have to replace your intake valves.
Yeah. So we can go straight here and continue on another single track. Are you down?
Yeah, I think I still got gas.
Okay, I'm totally down. And this thing
Yeah.
is a tanker. I've got like 6 gallons left, and that's not exaggerating.
Okay. Let's see. So my number 3 is without question a DRZ 400.
Yeah.
That bike has 49 millimeter forks. That's the biggest production size fork in a dirt bike. Now, why does big matter? It's because it's strong and it lasts.
Yeah.
They're 49 millimeters open chamber design, which is super good for off-road. It's very simple, doesn't have a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And so definitely DRZ 400. And the motor, I can see why it's so reliable. The shafts are big, the bearings are big, they've got bearing retainers. They're held in by Loctite, screws and Loctite. You'd have to look inside. Everything is webbed, so it's just designed to last, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much you can do to them. You can modify the crap out of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for dual sport, it's really hard to beat a DRZ 400. But you have to be you don't have to be, but it's better if you're 5'9" or taller. They are a tall bike.
Yeah, they're tall. Yeah. Hey, how's it going, you guys? Not friendly faces.
How you doing, guys? They looked at me like, what the heck? So they are a taller bike, which makes them a little bit harder off-road for some people. Are you in agreement with that?
I agree with that, and I agree. Lowering a bike is going to mess it up most times too, and you don't really want to lower a DRZ.
You could honestly, if you put the right springs on it, you could lower that bike 1.5 inches and you won't even know.
Really? Wow.
That's true. And the reason why is because you put different springs on when it's lowered. It's a little bit stiffer, so you don't have as much sag as you would stock. But your standover height, if you took some material out of the seat, I bet you could, seriously, you could lower that bike at least 2 to 2.5 inches.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And that would make a world of difference for some people.
Yeah, it would. So I got to go back a little bit and talk about the KLR. Sorry. So keep here. And we talked about it earlier today, but the KLR 650 is such an awesome bike. But I'm going to bring up the Duhfactor. Hello. And the Duhfactor is Tyler spent a lot of money modding his KLR 650, and then he bought a 990 that was pretty well stock, and bought the 990 for what he put into the KLR. Okay, so like some bikes in stock form, you know, they're great. Some bikes after they're modded, like, you know, the point I'm trying to make is you're not going to turn a KLR 650 into a dirt bike, like a dirt bike, right?
That is true.
People can still ride them amazingly well, but they're just never going to be, it's never going to be a 450X. It's not, you know? And so my point was going to be mods can only take a bike so far. Otherwise, it really is just better. Like if you really want to start doing more and more off-road stuff, and you got a KLR 650 and it's not cutting it for you, you're going to spend more money modding it than I think you would have to spend if you just bought a bike that would handle that stuff stock. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thought.
I think you're absolutely right. We started adding up the suspension bit. I mean, we were going to mod the crap out of his suspension. We had all the parts, and I had this big old plan. And then he was like, dude, this is going to cost me a lot of money.
Yeah.
I could, and he rode this bike, and he's like, man, I love your bike, and I love my KLR, but I'm going to have to spend a whole bunch of money to get the suspension and get it up where it can do the things, you know, that we normally do on these. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I think part of it is he just hears this LC8 V twin and just
it is a good sound,
it
dude.
does something to you, you know.
Oh yeah.
But okay, so that leads me to the next one, and I don't even know if this bike's really a dual sport, actually.
Well, throw it out there.
The WR250F.
Oh, that's a dirt bike, man. You can't.
Okay,
no,
throw that one out.
That's fine. No, I have one, and it is dual sported, and it is a good dual sport. In fifth gear, it runs out, but I mean, they're solid bikes for sure. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Right here is where Quinn ate it on his dirt bike when we were up here.
Oh.
He looked down into that massive hole.
Oh yeah.
Okay, no, let's scratch that one out. I can't do that.
Well, for a plated dirt bike, that does make a pretty good on-road bike. No lie. Like, those have a good track record. Man, I remember years ago, my brother Jay and I doing this, and this was the most hardcore thing we'd ever done. This was a 10 to us, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like leisurely, like this is easy, way easier than the stuff we were doing even earlier.
Yep.
It's just a cruise. Like anyway.
Yeah. Let me think here. This is hard because from a reliability standpoint, I think it's really hard to beat a Yamaha, generally speaking. So I'm gonna.
Dude, wouldn't it be awesome if they came out with a 400 or a 450 dual sport, like dedicated dual sport, that didn't cost 10 grand? That would be amazing.
If they, even a 350 with modern technology, I mean, the modern 250s are putting out as much power almost as the 450 250s of the
yeah.
mid-2000s,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That bounced me around a little bit. So I kind of think that you have to kind of think about, Damon
Oh,
stalled
sorry,
it.
man. My
No,
bad.
it's all right. It wasn't you. See, there's so many bikes that I would probably dual sport out, being in Utah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the CRF 150 or 230.
Yeah,
be
those actually make
awesome.
cool dual sports. They're not real good on the road at all,
sport
but
bike.
those things last forever and ever.
But I'm gonna have to go with the probably the XT250.
Yeah.
I would go with the 250 over the 225 just for a little bit more torque. But the low seat height is definitely a wonderful thing. And then for my last one, can you still hear me?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so for my last one, it would probably be the Honda 650L.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, those ranked pretty well in the survey too.
The main reason. Oh, bug. Okay, heads out, or it's down, one of the two. The reason is because of that air-cooled engine.
Yeah, nice and simple.
You cannot kill those things. You never replace valves on them. They're super reliable. Don't have a lot of power, but they've got enough.
Yeah.
And
well, enough to get you going 80 on the freeway, easy. You know what I mean? Like, and cruising 65 is a non-issue on that bike. Those are great bikes.
Yeah, and then you know, those bikes there's some of those built back in the 80s, early 90s that is still just going strong. Never had a rebuild.
Yeah.
And they used to be the bikes.
Watch out on the left there. There's an invisible rock hidden in a bush close to the tree. So on your left foot, just caution.
Oh, I see it. Yep, thank you.
I think knocked my toe like a sledgehammer. Good thing I wear like huge boots.
Yeah. So I like the Honda 650L.
This is our stop.
Yep.
Well, that's a good list, man. I think we both hit it on the head. And honestly, any of your bikes, aside from the KLX, I don't have a lot of experience on unmodded KLXs. So hey, how's it going, guys?
It's better than a Honda 250L in my opinion, but it's not as good as a WRR.
Yeah, those bikes are just really good. So yeah, I think any of the bikes, the reason why I wouldn't add the KLX on mine is I just don't have the experience on them, you know? I mean, I've ridden the KLX a ton, but that was Katsumi, heavily modified, you know.
I think they're just, I think the reason that they're kind of a little bit of a hidden gem is because they've got a 6-speed transmission.
Yeah, that's a big
their
deal.
first gear is pretty low.
That is good.
And it makes them, and they're not quite as tall as a DRZ, but they're not as low as a WR either.
Huh. That's cool.
Well, maybe they're closer to a WR, maybe on that, but that's kind of what I would say. And if I went back and looked at the list, I might go, oh no, I'd choose this one. You know, those are just the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, well, and one of the bikes that I forgot that I think should make a list, like, is the DR650. These things are super, super rock solid, reliable. And
yeah, air cooled.
And here's the thing is, like, the suspension, if they put like DRZ suspension on these, I think they'd sell like hotcakes, because the suspension is a weak point on these. But honestly, they have really good road legs. Like, they last forever, very reliable. They're good off-road. You know, looking at the survey, these are actually like I think they're one of the highest range bikes with the lowest cost.
All right, you guys, I hope that was helpful. I won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much for watching. Another huge thanks to my patrons and producers for helping create this video. Hopefully you found it useful. Thanks to all of the people who responded to the survey. Thanks to all the experts who helped out. Thank you, a huge thank you to Damon for providing his input. There's not a better resource out there than that guy. So you guys, much love, good luck finding an awesome dual sport, and we'll see you later.